Well, we are happy to be joined today by Joe Clark, who of course served as this country's 16th Prime Minister, also holding several prominent posts in the Mulroney government, including Secretary of State for External Affairs and Minister of Constitutional Affairs after the Meech Lake Accord. Mr. Clark, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
You know, Mr. Mulroney, in the beginning, was your political rival, and by the end of it was your friend. So I'm wondering what you are feeling and thinking about in this moment.
I should say that we began as friends, and we began as friends in a quite exciting time. The country was young, we were young. Mr. Diefenbaker, whom we both supported, had just won the prime ministership. He had done that as an optimistic Canadian, talking about the potential of the country, and Brian and I both responded to that. And that remained, that partnership did. I was thinking the other day that despite the differences that we've had from time to time, when it came to choose a leader in an earlier convention, both Brian and I were supporters of the late Davy Fulton from British Columbia in the leadership campaign. So our friendship and our association goes back a long time. You don't go through two leadership campaigns without fairly sharp views of circumstances, and he was hurt after his loss. I was hurt after my loss. What interested me was we were able to come together. I've seen some commentary suggesting it was a surprise that he named me as foreign minister. I wasn't surprised. On the one hand, I knew he needed me in his government. On the other hand, I knew there was an advantage to the foreign ministry because the foreign minister is out of the country a lot, and it left him with the freedom to establish or to deepen the leadership of the government. We obviously had some disagreements on particular issues. He was respectful of different views. In fact, I think one of the characteristics that people who didn't know him might be surprised at was just how respectful he was of the views of others. At the end of the day, he knew he had to decide, and he generally did that, showing respect for views of others. And at critical times in my ministerial career, when we had some major decisions to face, he supported me on them. He was there and made big investments in matters that I was leading. I mean, the investment of the Government of Canada, for example, in the discussions leading to the end of apartheid were quite substantial.
Substantial, and also essentially going against big allies of Canada, including Margaret Thatcher of the United Kingdom.
And indeed, the American government had its reservations about this. And that's an important point because Mulroney's relations with the heads of those governments caused them to, the phrase isn't put water in their wine, but that is what happened. They said, all right, we're in this, we have our views, but he is someone we respect, and that, I think, made our own progress in achieving the goal we sought easier.
Of course, Mr. Mulroney, as people are sharing their thoughts yesterday and today and into the days to come, what you hear time and again is how he was a larger-than-life figure. When you hear that statement, what comes to mind for you?
Well, he was a larger-than-life figure, obviously, both in personality. He always had been a booming personality, but also in office. But really the important thing about him was how much he respected the views of others. A national political party is made up of differences, and there are people who come from different regions, different perspectives, and they retain some of those differences and have to be persuaded. And one of the most important elements of persuasion is to recognize that your particular view is respected. And Mulroney, even if he didn't respond directly, if he didn't share that particular view, he gave members of the caucus, a quite diverse caucus, a sense that they were being heard, and they were. It was real. Perhaps his greatest talent was as a conciliator. He was a natural conciliator. Sometimes conciliators don't get things done. He was a conciliator who used that talent to get things done.
I wonder if there's a lesson in that for current politicians, because he oversaw a government where cabinet ministers really led their portfolios. It seemed to have been less centralized than what we see today. And that, of course, means that the role of Prime Minister changes. I'm wondering if there's a lesson in that for today's governments.
I think there's a great lesson in that, and it's not just a Canadian government lesson. It's a lesson generally about how successful governance works. One of the great changes is the preeminence of social media now, which creates a necessity to respond instantly to things, instantly and too often, by consequence, shallowly. We were able to, we didn't have that affliction at that time, and it has changed the nature of politics. I referred to Mr. Diefenbaker, who talked about what the country could become. There is now a focus upon the divisions in the country, and a focus on divisions is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It can be very dangerous. We become to define ourselves in our differences. There are always differences. Parliament is based upon differences, but the debate, particularly the debate in the floor, has always been a relatively respectful debate. And even in times when tempers were high, I recall a point when a then Liberal member of Parliament, a guy bigger than I was storming across with his fist clenched. That was the exception. Now there is an atmosphere of contest that is unfortunate in the House and I think in the country. Mm-hmm. And it was quite contrary to the way Mulroney acted as leader. He showed respect and affection for leaders of other parties, and he certainly showed respect for his own members of Parliament and the different views they had.
Well, you know, and to that point, I think some might be surprised by the number of political leaders who are stepping forward to say thank you for your advice, thank you for your mentorship. And not all of them are conservatives, progressive conservatives. There are others in other political parties. And I'm sure that doesn't surprise you at all.
Doesn't surprise me at all. It was his characteristic. It was one of his great successes, in fact. And it was easy to sort of to make fun of because but there was a suspicion that he wasn't sincere. He was very sincere in those conversations. And he was sincere. One of the marks about him was that despite all of the preoccupations of office, when something hard happened in the family or friends, Brian responded, and it wasn't fake. It was a genuine human quality. There was, he was celebrated, he was attacked in public life, but he was a very strong human who was able to use his human qualities to advance common interests.
You say human, and I'm thinking about Mr. Mulroney's family, of course, his wife and his children. And I've worked with his son, Ben, in a previous life. I've had the privilege to meet the other children. And what's clear is how much they love their father and how strong of a family the Mulroneys are. How important was that for Brian Mulroney?
It was essential, but it was also quite remarkable when you consider all the other things he had to deal with in life. And it's a hard life for families. Not only is the man in the family or the officer in the family absent often and away and preoccupied with other things, but there are all sorts of unkind things said that can't help but sting to a son or a daughter or a spouse. And they had to put up with that, and they knew it was going to happen. They either grew into it or they were disabused of any innocent sense when he entered public life. But it was genuine with him, and he maintained that strength. And it's rare. One doesn't have to earn the respect of your family. It's sort of natural, but it can dissipate. And in his case, he kept on earning that respect, and it was reciproque. It was returned by them. Mm-hmm. I caught up to them. I tried to phone last night. I couldn't get through to Mila, but I did get a call to Caroline, and she was naturally, the death was not a surprise, but it was a blow.
Of course.
And for precisely the reasons you're talking about, the closeness of that family, it was hard on them. Mm-hmm. I think to some degree, because the views of Brian Mulroney have been so diverse in the country and the criticism so common. I think the fact that so many people who did know him, people from whom you wouldn't expect support, are expressing their admiration for his approach is probably some balm or help to them. The challenge is more general because he did not invent that style of consultative leadership in the country. He made it work, and it's absent now, or it's declining now. And one hopes that a consideration of his comportment in high office, whether the high office of party leader or the high office of prime minister, one hopes that those models will become more evident in events in the country now.
So a political legacy, a political lesson for future generations, if not this current generation. But I'm wondering, and I don't know if they are one and the same for you, how will you remember Brian Mulroney? How do you hope the country remembers Brian Mulroney?
I'll remember him as someone who was a gifted and considerate leader. He and I had plenty of reasons to disagree on matters. We both overcame that, and he was encouraging to me throughout my time. For the country, he had a sense of great possibilities for Canada, and he acted to achieve them. He failed sometimes. We all fail sometimes, but that was the standard he set. And we were the beneficiaries of it on climate policy, on trade policy, on our legacy in international relations. Others played their role, of course. We were proud to play our role, but he was the Prime Minister of the country, and he set a tone. And he set a tone that a Prime Minister's office can be aloof. The office itself is alienating. It's away from people. For most of his time as Prime Minister, he was able to break that aloofness. There were criticisms, fierce criticisms, of course. That happens when somebody takes strong positions, as he did. But I think that an objective assessment of Brian Mulroney was that he was a quite extraordinary leader, both in his understanding of the nature of the country and in his capacity to cause Canadians to act in respect of that nature.
Joe Clark, thank you for sharing your thoughts. An honor to speak with you.
Thank you.